New video time. Let's get this show on the road. Wait a second. How long has it been since I made a video? Whoops. Well, hey everyone, it's me, guy who promises stuff and never delivers. Sort of like an estranged dad after the divorce. And just like said estranged dad, I'm here to bring you gifts you didn't ask for in the form of long-form video game circle jerks. All jokes aside, today's game is one that's really dear to me, but not in the same way as other games I've discussed. Silent Hill 2 has always been a strange beast for me personally, and I'll explain why, but this video is more for me to highlight something else that's very dear to me. That other thing is storytelling. If you've seen my other videos, you might have picked up that storytelling is my favorite kind of art. Any way you can tell a story, be it through a comic, anime, movies, or video games, or any of the other multitudes of art forms, I will always be on board. Today, as sort of an exercise for me, but also as an informative piece of media for you, I hope to try and explain why Silent Hill is so effective at telling its story. So, at the risk of putting my literary opinion out there for the world to see, let's jump into this analysis of Silent Hill 2's story. Now, as for most of my videos, let's go ahead and start at the very beginning. Silent Hill had an interesting beginning, to say the least. It's a success story we can all enjoy. A group of rejects within Konami were tasked with making a horror game that would sell well in the States. A quick cash grab, if you will. The expectations were low, but this little team's ambitions were high. The short version of this story is that they nailed it. Silent Hill was a hit, and while I personally feel it pales in comparison to 2 in the story department, the rest of the game was solid. However, we don't need to talk about Silent Hill 1 for you to understand this video. Silent Hill 2 stands on its own, making this disjointed way of me approaching the series on my channel a bit easier on me. Now, let's fast forward to 2001. The song If You Were Gone by Matchbox 20 is number 6 on the charts, and I wouldn't learn to appreciate this song for another 10 years at least. Silent Hill 2 was also released. Now, it's easy to tell from my channel that I was a late 90s baby. When 2001 came around, I was too young to be playing a game that complex. For the most part, this was a game that slipped me by because of that. Even when I came into my gaming awakening around 05 to 08, I still passed this game up. I was too absorbed with Resident Evil to even notice the other little survival horror darling in my peripheral. It wasn't until late middle school that I fell into Silent Hill by way of Silent Hill 3, a game I will absolutely talk about, but even then I didn't give Silent Hill 2 a glance. I truly came to appreciate this game in high school. This game completely missed all of the special periods in my life the game's affected, but still it feels like it was there. It's weird to describe, but the feeling the game gave me smashed my brain with so much nostalgia for the games in my youth that saved me. Nostalgia for something I didn't experience growing up is probably the best way I could describe it. So at this point, you're probably thinking, Marcus, here you go again, jerking a game off like you always do. You said this one was going to be different. I just kind of thought context for my headspace was important, to let you know that I'm totally biased when it comes to this game. One more disclaimer, many people, much better than me, have analyzed this game front to back, much better than I ever have. In the end, this video will be my personal interpretation where interpretation is needed. Shout out real quick to another YouTuber, Jordan Underneath, for being an inspiration not only for this video, but for my return to YouTube in general. I would plug the gaming videos he used to do, but he has since moved on to other things and has deleted them. They can still be found, but I believe he didn't want them to be seen again, so in an effort to respect his wishes, I won't link them, but I will link to his current content. If you're into surreal experiences and amazing artwork, give it a watch. I'll try my best to keep this video from being too similar to his and to add something interesting to the conversation with my own viewpoint as a writer. And believe me, I use the word writer very loosely. With housekeeping out of the way, let me try my best to explain not only why, but how Silent Hill 2's storytelling is one of the best examples of how to do it right. So, let me try to be informative for a second. It's not my strong point, but hear me out. Many things can make or break a story. This isn't any kind of medium of storytelling. Immersion is one of those things. I know immersion is tossed around like a buzzword in this day and age, but it's really important. Now, there are many ways to build up immersion in your story. You can build an interesting world, or start with a good premise that's ripe for exploration, or you can create stunning visuals. Obviously, this isn't an exhaustive list, but it's a start. Now, as a writer, sometimes even I forget about the next one. Music. Music can do so much for setting a mood, building an atmosphere, or even giving away character traits if you're talented enough to work with it. It can be used in an almost infinite amount of ways, and Silent Hill 2 uses it perfectly. My favorite part, hands down, is the intro cutscene. We start with a scene of what looks to be mistaken identity as a man and a woman speak separated by metal bars. The whole scene is cut together expertly to give you this lost feeling, and then that track slowly fades in. That beat grips you, and suddenly you're pulled into this haunting melody filled with distorted guitar and ominous ambient instruments. The song is upbeat, yet the key is somber. Over top of the clips in the background, you feel this lonely shadow creep over you. And suddenly, you're firmly rooted into the game's atmosphere, and it hasn't even really started yet. This is immersion done right. Build the feeling you want to evoke right from the start, and use every tool at your disposal to do it. This is easier said than done for other forms of media. Not everyone dabbles in music and can utilize it. Damn sure not everyone's as good as my main man Akira here. For whatever form of storytelling you use, the point stands like this. Figure out the feeling you want to convey. At a base level, figure out how you're going to make that feeling, and never get confused on the feeling, or feelings, that you're trying to convey with your story. Speaking of feelings, let's talk for a second on the feeling that Silent Hill 2 gives. Once again, many people, better than I, have analyzed this story, but my opinion pretty much lines up with a general consensus. Silent Hill 2 is a lonely and depressing game. It has the tone, the world, and the story writing all set up to convey this. Even when you're in a room with another character, you still don't fully feel safe. This, to me, is the most addictive part of the game. It is cathartic, like when you have a bad breakup and you listen to sad music to sit in those feelings. Silent Hill 2 is that in every second of its 8-hour run, and that's just for the main story and one of the many endings. It is that feeling when you're alone. It is that feeling like the world has gone on without you. It is that feeling of being stuck to something in the past while time marches on. Silent Hill 2 is those feelings reflected back at you, a mirror of an aspect of the human experience that we all feel. This is why feelings in your story are so important to convey, and to convey correctly. Now, let's do a little bit of leapfrog here and move away from the feelings for a second. I have a question for the class. What do you think I believe is the best part of Silent Hill storytelling? Yes, if you answered anything to do with feelings or immersion that I mentioned earlier, you would be very wrong, but I could see how you got to that idea. As a matter of fact, it was a trick question, and I'm sorry for tricking you. It is true, storytelling can be more than just writing, but writing, be it seen or unseen, is still the backbone. All the interesting setup, beautiful immersion, and focus on feelings won't save you if your writing isn't good. This brings me to what I believe Silent Hill 2's biggest contribution to storytelling as an art form is. We're going to be talking about the characters now. Spoiler alert, because I'm going to be speaking as if you already know the story or don't care if it's spoiled. If you've been enticed to play this game at all by anything I've said above, I would highly advise you to go ahead before getting spoiled. We enter Silent Hill with James Sunderland, our protagonist and primary viewpoint for this world. The primary viewpoint line will come into play later, trust me. James is looking for his wife in Silent Hill. We hear his wife, Mary's voice, reciting the letter she gave to him.
In my restless dreams, I see that town, Silent Hill. You promised you'd take me there again someday. But you never did. Well, I'm alone there now. In our special place. Waiting for you.
The kicker comes a second later when James says it's strange he got this letter because Mary's dead. James didn't have to be Einstein to figure out what was wrong with that one, but regardless, grief-stricken and not sure what to think, James comes to Silent Hill in search of Mary. James is a sad character from the start, thrust into the unknown with us as the players along for the ride. His circumstances are strange, but really what choice does he have? This is a good setup, and it's ripe for exploration. The next character we meet comes fairly quickly. Angela seems by all accounts to be a normal person like James. When the two meet, you get to see something interesting. The voice direction in this game is built deliberately to create a dreamlike quality. Like something is just slightly off with their conversations. Here, have a listen.
Excuse me,
Oh, I'm sorry. I
No,
was
it's
just...
okay. I didn't mean to scare you. I'm kind of lost.
Lost?
Angela is here, looking for people, just like James. She mentions a father and a brother, but she clearly wishes to find her mother more. Both characters draw comparisons between each other being lost and looking for people. This is foreshadowing. Foreshadowing is a literary device that can be used to great effect, but it can also come off as seeming a bit pretentious if done wrong. I dropped a little bit earlier in the script to see if you would notice. Foreshadowing is literally defined as a warning of things to come. In storytelling, you can use foreshadowing to hint at pieces of lore, future events to come, or point to more obscure pieces of the world that may otherwise go unnoticed. It is a useful device, if it's used well. Too much foreshadowing and it completely loses all effect. In this way, you can drop hints and clues that create a mystery that the player can solve as they go on about their business throughout this game world, but enough of me reciting like 4th grade English at you, we have more of the game to cover. Angela and James eventually break off and we get into the town proper. Funny, a video about Silent Hill and we took this long to finally get to the town. Silent Hill is like small town suburbia meets hell. Best way to describe it. A ghost town filled with dense fog, creating an isolated and claustrophobic feeling even in the open streets. Every shadow moving just beyond the fog could be another monster or just another building. Once again, feeling an atmosphere hard at work. The town traps you, the fog confines you, and the monsters harry you at every turn. Lonely and alone no matter what you do. Of course, I don't think I need to jerk the atmosphere off anymore. James soon meets 2 more characters, the first one being Eddie. Oh wait, I forgot something, huh? That was Pyramid Head. Forget about him in every game or movie he's turned up in, because this is where he got his start, and where he got his purpose. Pyramid Head is a powerful symbol in this game. Notice up until this point, the monsters you have faced have been feminine. Curvy, smooth, and leggy. Hell, one monster type is literally just legs on legs. Now, notice Pyramid Head. He's muscular, powerful, clearly masculine. His head is trapped in by this metal contraption we call the pyramid, and all that metal pushing and rubbing into the bare skin is to be torturous. Pyramid Head stands as a stark contrast to the beast from before. James deals with him the best way he knows how. And then we move on to Eddie. Eddie is throwing up everything he's ever thought of eating while babbling about how he didn't do it, seemingly in response to the dead body in the fridge in the room over. Eddie is something special. The way he speaks about the dead body, how he swears up and down he didn't do anything before accusations are even given out. Something is odd about the way he acts and speaks. Something secret is crawling underneath that we don't get to see just yet. He also does something else important in saying that he hasn't seen any red pyramid thing, as James puts it. A simple throwaway line your first time through, but it's a nice piece of foreshadowing for this puzzle. Maybe now you've caught on a bit as to where I'm going with these characters. I see no reason to beat around the bush with this, as it'll just make the video far too long. Silent Hill is amazing at creating complex and flawed characters, one of the hardest things to do in storytelling. To create characters that are deeply flawed, but not hateable for their flaws. Some people often forget that characters don't need to be relatable, but only understandable. Silent Hill 2 embodies that rule. Before we break this case wide open, I want to talk about Maria. James meets Maria on the docks and is surprised to see she is a near identical twin to her dead wife. This time dressed in provocative clothes. Maria instantly latches onto James and insists on joining him. Throughout their time together chasing after Laura, another important character, Maria alludes to having a hangover making her sick and taking medication throughout. After a strange event in the hospital, when Maria finds you again, she goes off on James for leaving her and telling him to never leave her again. Now, ignoring how manipulative this scene feels when it's a woman who looks exactly like your dead wife, we see moments later Maria get killed by a pyramid head as James is forced to watch. Right after, mind you, he promised to never leave her again. This isn't the last time James has to see her die just for her to come back again. It's clear Maria, and the many deaths James has to endure of her, is an allegory for his struggle with his wife. Now, it doesn't take the smartest person to guess what you're being presented with in Silent Hill 2 isn't real. Why is all of this happening to James, and what do the other characters have to do with it? I believe in some ways that this town is happening to the other characters as well, but I believe the other characters are happening to James just as much as the town is happening to him. Let me explain. Eddie is a catalyst for James to start questioning himself. As we see Eddie more, he starts to come unhinged. We see him later with Laura at a bowling alley just chatting. They briefly talk about how the cops were after him, and Eddie says he ran because he was scared, a point he instantly goes back on when he says that no one would ever forgive him. Eddie has done something, obviously, and something bad enough for the cops to be after him, and he is completely disillusioned as to why. Following through with Eddie, you eventually find him in a dark cafeteria with a dead body. A human body. Now, it's worth it to mention you don't see many dead humans around Silent Hill, and the ones that you do see are usually near Eddie. Eddie says he killed the guy. At first, he says that the guy came at him. A lie, because the body is face down at a table and hasn't even moved from the seat. Then he says besides that, he was making fun of him with his eyes. James rightly explains to Eddie the logistical problems with giving someone a lead pill just because they looked at you funny, and Eddie backs off. Not after talking about how people before made fun of him and he just got walked all over. However, at this point, he lets it go, laughs it off as a joke. James is rightfully concerned, but this still doesn't come to a head until later when we encounter Eddie in a room with more bodies. He has become completely unhinged at this point and goes on about how he was viciously bullied, how no one was his friend, and no matter how hard he tried, he was the laughingstock. When Eddie perceives James as making fun of him, the two end up having to fight, and all through this, Eddie keeps hammering the point that James and him are alike, and how he's come to the town for the same reasons. Eddie dies at James's hands. This is the first time James starts to question his motives, and if you were to check Mary's letter from the start of the game, you would too. After killing Eddie, the letter turns blank, leading you to ask yourself why you're really here. I think I've gone on for a bit without being informative, so let me interject here. The whole arc with Eddie and James is meant to highlight something. That James is hiding something even from the player, and 2, Eddie and James might not be so different. Eddie was a tragic character. It is worth it to note that before entering Silent Hill, he hadn't actually killed anyone. He was bullied and scared. No one wanted him back where he came from. The constant verbal and possibly physical abuse was maddening. He ended up killing one of his bully's dogs and shot his bully in the knee, ending his football career before running off to Silent Hill. This is a character that might not be relatable, but is understandable. You can feel Eddie's plight. You can feel his pain. You can see how he was driven to the actions he took. You can see and understand without condoning. This is how to make a deeply flawed character. Have well thought out reasons and actions taken to get that character where they are. Build up flaws that are realistic and force the character into certain situations or roles. Something they have to work with or die trying. And in the end, Eddie dies by his faults. Thus, Eddie becomes the catalyst for James to start questioning himself and what he believes. By this point in the story, you might be able to understand that Silent Hill seems to present itself to the characters differently, and while their worlds may cross, the people in Silent Hill are stuck in their own versions of this hell. If you pay attention to the details drop between characters, you can spot it. If you didn't pick it up yourself, the game outright tells you with Angela. In my eyes, Angela is to shine a light on James's problem with women during his wife's illness. While maybe not everything she says is strictly true, a lot of the things she says to James provoke an emotional reaction. Like maybe he hasn't done it, but he thought about it. Look no further than the next important scene with Angela in the apartments. We find her laid out on the floor holding a kitchen knife. It seems like she intends to commit suicide. Once again, we have deeply flawed complexities coming to the surface. These characters have real issues and run the gauntlet on how they deal with them, from complete delusion, resigned grief, irrational anger, and consuming depression. Angela continues to cement her ties to James and both of their ties to the town with her next lines.
Yeah, I'm James.
Angela.
Angela, okay. I don't know what you're planning, but there's always another way.
Really? But you're the same as me. It's easier just to run. Besides, is what we deserve.
No, I'm not like you.
You afraid? I'm sorry.
This is a charge James is quick to fight. Almost too quick in my opinion. Disclaimer once again, where interpretation is needed, I am injecting my own beliefs. James talks her down from her attempt and she turns the knife over to him, afraid of what she might do with it. This knife, coincidentally, is needed for the in-water ending where James kills himself. Once again, a little too quick to fight the charge in my opinion. Angela returns again when James helps her kill a monster that was attacking her, one she calls Daddy. Once it's dead, she continues attacking it in a fit of rage before she comes to her senses a bit. This scene is what gives away why Angela is here. I could spend 3 more videos at least picking apart each individual character, but for the sake of keeping this video more focused, we'll just focus on what she says to James. She asks if James's wife was dead, and he replies yes, she was ill. Angela returns with,
Liar! I know about you. You didn't want her around anymore. You probably found someone else.
That's ridiculous. I never...
Another charge, James fights, but only as Angela leaves. James's own delusions might be falling apart by this point in the story, or I could be overanalyzing. But one thing is for sure, the line has an effect on him. The last scene we have with Angela strikes hard. So hard, I'd rather just show the scene in its entirety than take it apart verbally.
Mama, I was looking for you. Now you're the only one left. Maybe then I can rest. Mama, why are you running away? You're not my mama. It's you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Angela, no!
Thank you for saving me. But I wish you hadn't. Even Mama said it. I deserved what happened.
No, Angela, that's wrong.
No, don't pity me. I'm not worth it. Or maybe you think you can save me. Will you love me? Take care of me? Heal all my pain? That's what I thought. James, give me back that knife.
No, I won't.
Saving it for yourself?
Me? No, I'd never kill myself. It's hot as hell in here.
You see it too. For me, it's always like this.
And with that, Angela is gone, swallowed up by the town. This town that shows itself as a personal hell to each of its residents. A trial by fire in your own mind where you either defeat your demons and move on, or die trying. This scene means a lot to me, and that is mostly because of how much I love, respect, and to a point relate to Angela's character and the range of emotions she goes through. She battled the burning inferno around her constantly as her own personal hell, but in the end succumbed to the blaze. A tragic character meets a tragic end. Each one of these characters are the same, each one linked by internal turmoil fueled by horrible external circumstances. Eddie's vicious bullying at the hands of his town, Angela's physical and emotional abuse, and James being forced to sideline his life and watch while his wife withered and died before his very eyes. Each one of these people did something horrible, whether warranted or unwarranted, in response. Eddie murdered a dog and ended another man's football career. Angela killed her father, and James was the one that actually killed his wife. Each one of these characters are built deliberately flawed, each having done horrible actions and now forced to live with them. Silent Hill called to each one for atonement or death, a descent into a hell of their own making. Each one of these characters are understandable, and depending on who you are, maybe even relatable. They have flaws and complexities that make them human. They've done bad things, but the gray area in their actions and the mental headspace each one is in creates these complex interactions. No one would blame Angela for defending herself against her father, but her own guilt from the event, her own view of herself after years of abuse, and her own feelings towards everyone around her swallowed her up. Finally, let's put this to bed with one final dive on James. Nearing the end of the game, we are treated to seeing Maria one more time as the Pyramid Heads kill her again. Now James understands, and by now the player, if you've picked up on it, you might understand too. All of James's monsters are feminine. Each one is oddly sexual in appearance save for Pyramid Head, a monster no one else can see because he is special to James. The monster murders a lookalike of James's wife multiple times in front of him, and this is the only masculine monster in his world. This all points to Pyramid Head being a symbol for James, a symbol for his desire to be punished. He repressed the memory of killing his dying wife, but never could outrun the guilt he carried with it. Pyramid Head served as an outlet for that, and thus became James's personal monster. In a turn of character development, however, James realizes this and decides he doesn't need Pyramid Head anymore. He can answer for himself now. After a battle with two Pyramid Heads, you are greeted to the final bit of the game. James heads down a hallway, and you can hear a conversation between James and Mary before she died. This voice acting is something else, and it goes a long way to prove that the campy acting from before was an intentional decision when they have voice talent around like this. This, and the scene later with James talking to Mary after the final boss, highlight how complex James is. Yes, James killed his wife, but he didn't just do it for one reason. He loved her and she was suffering. She wanted it to be over, and James gave her that. He also hated her for putting his life on hold like that, for the constant verbal berating she would give him every time he came to visit her. It is a complex event. There wasn't one single reason. He loved Mary more than life itself, but he also hated her for the way things were. This isn't totally unlike what someone would feel in real life with a loved one going through something so horrible. Once again, Silent Hill proves to be a mirror reflection of the human condition. It is beauty in loneliness, because it is so fantastically human. This, to me, is why Silent Hill 2 is a paragon of storytelling and gets character writing better than anyone ever could.
Restless dreams. I see that town. Silent Hill. You promised you'd take me there again someday, but you never did. Well, I'm alone there now, in our special place, waiting